Cup, meaning I watched the games and took it all in, and my family was there. So I certainly tried to absorb more of this one and celebrate a little bit more.
That's fantastic.
More champagne in the locker room, I think.
Oh, yeah. We saw, and I don't know if anyone follows her on Instagram, but or the team on Instagram. There's a little bit of champagne pop.
A little bit of champagne shower.
Yeah, a little bit more celebrating this time. So, hey, having had that prior experience, not just leading the World Cup win, but actually winning the World Cup, what was different this time around that maybe you didn't expect?
I mean, I think in 2015 we got on the charter to come back, and they said, "Hey, we're taking you to LA. We're going to have a rally there." And I lived in LA. I'm like, nobody's going to show up at that, And I get there, there's like 10,000 people, and I was like, wow. And so I really didn't realize, because you're in your bubble, how big the World Cup was and how many fans, followed us. So I think going into this one, I certainly saw more and absorbed more. But I actually think because I had a longer prep time, there weren't really that many surprises, because everything we'd done, playing the tougher opponents, making sure we knew how good everybody was, being more prepared tactically, having a deeper roster, it actually gave us a little bit more. For me, preparing and preparation gives us confidence. So I think there wasn't too many surprises in the tournament. I think we were anticipating and expected a lot of things to happen.
Yeah, we're not good enough to win the World Cup. How difficult was it, and what did you do to sort of change the mentality there?
Yep. I think it started with just my perspective, because if you're the top in your field, then you always want to continue to create that separation. And if you're not, you're trying to close the gap. So what does that space look like in there? And it's the pursuit of excellence, and there's no finish line for excellence. So what I did with my players, the very first meeting, I put up the quote. Many of you probably heard it. It's even if you're on the right track, if you sit there, you'll get run over. Because what I wanted to do was to engage them. When you deal with motivated people, they don't want to sit where they are. They want to continue to evolve. And so I think a large part of it was poking them a little bit to say, hey, listen, you're number one in the world. We just won the Olympic gold. But if we want to win this next hurdle, we've got to make sure we continue to create that separation. And so they bought in. I mean, it was setting a roadmap. It was setting goals and expectations and working to get better. But I think ultimately you challenge those people, because they don't want to just sit where they are. Elite people want to get better.
So I'm sure some of you can relate to elite people wanting to get. So how do you have these professional athletes that in many cases are world famous, right? They can't walk on the street without being stopped. How do you motivate them or keep them motivated to do the things that are necessary in the daily grind? So the cone drills and all the foot skills and the things that they were doing when they were U14s. How did you keep them motivated so that it wasn't just a daily grind?
I think multiple ways. I think when you put together an activity or drill, it's not just a simple piece. It's more complex. So there's maybe 4 or 5 different demands within that drill itself. So everything we do, it involves a decision making. So when you go out there, you can just pass the ball back and forward, or now you can see a defender coming, you've got the timing, you've got different things. So you create an environment where there's actually a learning piece to what they do. I think competition is also a way that keeps them motivated, because heck, it's the older players who want to continue to stay on top, the younger players want to chase them down. So I think that's healthy for an environment. I love people that that just want to just continue to compete. And I just think part of it is the players you bring in there, the culture you create in that environment. It is not about being where you are, it's where you want to be. And I think the players bring that. So whether it's, I watched a player like Crystal Dunn. Crystal would come in and she'd start to, work on her bench shot. Instead of just this way, she'd work and open up. Because they want to add more. We always say about adding more clubs to the bag, so you can play every shot. Mm-hmm. So again, I think it all centers around the fact that these players have a desire, and you create a culture and a climate where it's challenging to them. And it is detail-oriented, and the beauty of soccer is every game is different. Yep. Every opponent is different, so you constantly have to, mix things up.
That's a great. Can you give a specific example of a time where you have had that happen, where you set the wheels in motion, but you have to step back and be patient and let it transpire in front of you?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully you guys watched the France game, yeah?
Jill, I don't know if you know, but you weren't supposed to win the World Cup. Like, France was favored to win this World Cup.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Je ne sais pas.
Yeah.
So I think, and I think people, the general public is so educated about soccer. I mean, soccer is not a sport like football or basketball where you can do this. It really is about a sport that you have to prepare everything beforehand. And that's what I mean. Then on game day, you let that work shine, so to speak, and you let all the labors that you've done to that point hopefully play out. Now, you have to manage the game and you have to make decisions within the game. But I think France was the perfect game where we actually started, so we scheduled, I chased France. I wanted to get them on our schedule in January. And the reason I did was because I knew that to win the World Cup, we'd have to go through this team. So we played them in January. They were in season. We were not. We traveled over there. They were obviously playing at home. And we lost that game 3-1. But it was so valuable because what I said to the players after the game on the field, I said, that is the best this team is, because I knew they had most of their starters. We have got so much more to do. And then it was the work, it was the process, it was making sure we had multiple systems in place. It was getting the right players, it was the mentalities, creating that environment. And then on game day, I'll be honest, people are like, you see the media the day before the game, you seem so relaxed. I said, because we are ready. And that just, we got confidence in that. So
It's fantastic. So there are particular players that either struggled or those that you thought just absolutely you weren't sure how they do, but they just stepped up to their game, to rise to the occasion?
Yeah, I'm a nightmare in my personal logistics, but I'm a planner when it comes to wanting to win a trophy. So I think, for example, in 2015, I took the team down to Brazil, and logistics were hard. Fields were rained out. It was just a lot of trouble, in terms of logistics. And I said to the team after that, any curveball that gets thrown at us, we'll be able to hit out the ballpark. But then I took them to France, and we got beat there in that build-up. And I said, this is going to help us be better. So I purposely made it harder, because then if you are skilled in that and you are strong in that, then when you step into that arena, you've already experienced that intensity. And what I know about the players and what I know about myself is that the bigger the moment, the bigger the demand, the more the response. And so I think when you go through all these hardships and you know what it takes, and the ebb and flow of a game to the decision making, when you've gone through that in a period of build-up, when you actually get in that moment, that is the moment to kind of shine and just, I think it brings out the best of me. I was the kid that did my 20-page paper 11 p.m. the night before it was due. Now, you might think I was a procrastinator, but in actuality, what I knew is the pressure to get it done actually made me better. So I enjoy that. I think it makes you, I said to the players, I knew in big games, I actually worry more in games against not the top teams, because then it's but against the big teams, the bigger the moment. The player I'll reference has to be Alyssa Nair, our goalkeeper. Alyssa had, our previous goalkeeper, Hope, was best goalkeeper in the world, had won a ton of medals, very, very successful. And Alyssa was now stepping into those shoes. And if I give you an example, every time you play for the national team, you get a cap. So I think Hope had over 200 caps, and Alyssa had probably, when I started, 13. And so she had these massive shoes to fill. The media, the fans, everybody, there was so much expectation on this player. And she's a very quiet person. But I remember meeting with her and I just said, listen, tune everything out. You've got the ability, you've got the skill set. We're behind you, you're our one. And so, you want to build that up. And then to see her make that save in the World Cup to push through to the final was her moment to shine. Big time.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your prior goalkeeper. I would imagine with so many big personalities in one place, and over time I'm sure they develop. When they come in, they might be a little more humble, and then as they gain more popularity, they kind of expand. How do you deal with conflict amongst such big personalities?
I think a team environment, I think part of when you build your team and you select your team, you have to I think you have to know the fabric of the people, and so I think part of it is you want to make sure, character certainly counts. You want the best talented players. So I think part of when you build a team, you certainly look at, the people and how it's going to mesh. But I think ultimately, everything is about connection. So I think, if you're dealing with conflict, if you already have an established connection with somebody and you've built, you might not agree, but there's a mutual, you can agree to disagree, there's a mutual respect there. I think that's part of it. I also think, I'm a big believer in getting out ahead of things. So, I'll tell the players, listen, this is, in 2016, after the Olympics, I said to the players, we're going to have a hard reset on the program. And it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be tough, you're going to be uncomfortable. So you tell them all that so that when it happens, you can kind of remind them, hey, this is what we knew was going to happen. And it's, to me, to be on the national team, that's how it should be. There's no gimmies. But I think, I think conflict is, and then I think the final thing, how I personally deal with it, is just to be very direct. I'm probably a bit more, I don't candy coat things, but a little bit more tempered in how I deliver information. But I think people appreciate, especially people that want to get better, they certainly appreciate the information coming in a way that's going to help them take the next step. It's not just, hey, this isn't good enough. Hey, listen, this is not good enough now, but this is where we need to get to. But yeah, ultimately, as leaders, you're going to have people that are going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
And, I think that's part of being in that role. But I just think it's about understanding the fabric of the people around you and being able to work with them.
So you mentioned there are going to be people that disagree with you. There are critics. You had critics left and right.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that. People that didn't like your decisions on substitutions or certain players. You had two massive players that you had the courage to make a decision on, right? Just one with Abby Wambach and then Carly Lloyd, and sort of having them play a different role. Did those relationships that you had developed with them over time kind of help with those decisions, knowing that it was in the best interest of the team for them to now take a different role on the team?
Yes, certainly. I think the more, you don't want to blindside people, so the more you can, again, get ahead of it. I met with Abby when I took over the team, and I said, Abby, I don't care if you have one leg, I'm taking you to the World Cup because of all the things that you are. But I'm not sure if you'll be a starter, if you'll be a reserve, who will come in, what your role will be. Can you do this? And just the quality of that person was just like, yes. Yeah. Carly's similar in terms of, I think, it was too soon to define a role when we were building, because it was a long build-up. But it was, essentially it was, Carly wanted to be a starter. And I said, you know what? I'm good with that. You want to always achieve more and want to aspire for more, but make sure you embrace what you have, and she did, complete professional.
Absolutely.
I think, when you make those decisions, I think two things. One, I've always tuned out the noise. I think that's part of when you're a leader. You have your group. I don't really care what people think. I don't need to read the paper to know how good my team played or how poorly we played. I was there. So I think part of what you do is you have to be comfortable. I knew what the job entailed going in, so I think it was like, okay, you just, in the moment, you make the decisions. And I think the thing my dad taught me when I was little is, if you make the decisions best for the team, sometimes you have to cut a player, sometimes you have to let a staff member go. There's some really hard decisions. You have to lower a person's pay, because the contracts are different. But again, I think what you can sleep with at night is knowing that you're doing what you believe is best in your heart. It's not personal. People might take it personally, but the reality is you can trust that because it's your decision, it's your focus to put the team first.
That's fantastic. That's worthy of a round of applause. So I said on the stage last night, and I'll say this time and time again, we're all products of our environment. I believe that how you do everything is how you do anything, right? So if you pay attention to the details, things seem to fall into place, meaning it's almost like the harder you work, the luckier you get. But
yep.
So I read that coming into the 2015 World Cup, there were some players on the team that had been there for quite some time that were just blown away by the level of detail of the scouting reports that you put together. Is there a particular memory that you have of where paying attention to those details really truly made a difference, sort of set the team apart?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and even actually, I would probably say in 2019, we even amped that up even more.
Nice.
I think because, from 15 to 19, the level of play across the board got so much better. But I think, I think for example, we probably had a database of almost 150 penalty kicks, almost on every player from the time they were young of our opponent. Wow. We had that. We had, so one of the things I actually took away from like American football, so I said to the players, I'm like, most of the time when a team wins a championship, they have to go through penalty kicks. So we're going to simulate that. We're not going to see going to penalty kicks as a failure. We're going to embrace that as part of the game. So it was the detail of, we even, we filmed every penalty kick. We simulated noise. We actually recorded when we were in France and they were booing us. We took that and we bumped that through this, when we were training. Because I wanted to make sure that the players had experienced all that. So I think in terms of, detail, the France game specifically, France wanted to create a transition game, meaning they wanted you to have the ball so they could win it and then boom, hit you on the transition. And so at times we pressed them and at times we sat out off them. Training in that regard, knowing your opponent so well, but also playing to your strengths. I think that was, that was probably a game where we implemented a lot of details. But I agree, I mean, I think for me, details gives us confidence. We knew teams inside and out, but more importantly, we knew ourselves inside and out. We knew what our strengths were, we knew how to maximize. Every player knew their role, they could speak a common language, and so it was very easy for them to interact, to communicate, and to really relate to each other. So they felt, 23, they felt invincible going on pitch.